Hey there, it's Elke.
And Jen, and welcome to another episode of the Creative and Ambitious Entrepreneur Podcast. And today we are going to be talking about yours truly, how I dropped out of business school and started my own online business. This is very near and dear to my heart because it is actually the first, step in my Zazzle journey, which has now got me here 14 years later. And my mother, Elke, had a huge influence on that. And so we're going to be talking about my story in terms of how I dropped out and then all my lessons learned as well going forward for anybody who wants to maybe question their future path in terms of business and or just where they want to go after possibly studying or just even now in general. Maybe years later after even being in university and life, you want to change your path and make a difference in your future. So we're going to be talking about that in this episode.
Plus, at the end, we're going to have a little bit of a summary to help you get an insight of what Jen feels like now, like some negatives and some positives of her taking that choice and walking through it in life and where she is now, and just getting you some realistic hindsight that you might be really happy about, that you can use in your decision making as to whether or not you want to start an online business.
Mm-hmm. So, taking you back a couple years, I was in university. I was in grade school and high school. And then all of a sudden in high school, something magical happens where they ask you to choose your university and basically decide what you're going to be doing for the rest of your life. I was one of those kids who had no idea what I truly wanted to do. I knew I wanted to be creative and somehow work that into my financial path and or career path going forward, but I didn't really have this huge end-all, be-all dream. And so I decided to go into business because I really wanted to, at one point, open my own business and start my own creative company, whether that be with, I was really interested in fashion and design, so I thought I would take the generic route and go into business. So I was pre-accepted into the Ivy School of Business. If you are anywhere in Canada or in Ontario, you know that the Ivy School is a very well-renowned school for business at the University of Western Ontario. And so
to get your MBA.
To get my MBA. So I was pre-accepted with very high marks, and pre-accepted means that the Ivy School of Business, you actually start a couple years after you are in university. You have to do, I think, the first two years.
Right?
Yeah, it's kind of like pre-med, but for business. So you had to do the 2 first years or 3 years, I think, of actual starting in the business degree, so your general BA, and then you could move into the Ivy School of Business. And so I was in university for those first 2 years, and I struggled pretty hard. I'm not going to lie. I was a very good academic in high school, and I got really good grades, but when I moved into university, I had a lot of issues focusing. I was also in certain courses which I didn't really understand and I didn't like, and I just felt very nervous and overwhelmed. I had a lot of anxiety as well, and I just was not having a good time in my university experience. And so those first 2 years, it was a turning point, let's say, and I spoke to my parents a lot about this and tried to figure out where my path was. I really wanted to go into business, let's say, but I didn't know how to get there. The path that I was taking didn't feel really aligned with me. I didn't feel good about what I was doing, and I felt very nervous and always was questioning and second guessing myself. And it was actually the first time in my entire life where I felt like I couldn't accomplish something within the academic system. I was always very good at achieving marks and getting good grades, but here I actually failed my first class and failed my first exam, and that felt very awkward to me.
It wakes you up and it makes you really scared about, oh my gosh, what's coming next?
Yeah. So during that time, I spoke with my parents, as I mentioned, and I figured out that I could do something different. So I ended up actually dropping out in my second year. After I completed my second year, I was about to go into my third. And before I started my third year, I made the decision not to go back. And my parents were very supportive of that. And they said that it was actually the right thing to do because at that time, I was not enjoying what I was doing, and I probably would have suffered and or just not been able to open up to figure out other ways of either becoming something in terms of a business opportunity or just, my career path. And so I took some time off to figure out what I was doing. In the meantime, while I was dropping out of university, my mom, a year prior, had actually given me information about this platform called Zazzle, which we now have our businesses on and teach people actually how to make money online with Zazzle 14 years later. And so in university, I was using it as sort of a hobby and like a side hustle, let's say, to make some extra money so that I could go out to the movies or go to the bars or restaurants with my friends, just to have a couple of extra dollars here and there, because I didn't actually have a job while I was in university. Like, I wasn't working physically somewhere. And I took this opportunity after dropping out to actually expand my Zazzle business. And this was right around the same time that Elke started to understand a little bit more about the Zazzle platform and how she could make more money. And you've most likely heard us talk about the 5 strategies if you've been within our community. And those 5 strategies were created right then and there within that time period, because Elke was working on her own Zazzle business trying to make more money. And so when I dropped out of university, I started to really focus on my Zazzle business with the help of Elke and her guidance, because I truly thought that I wanted to make something out of this. I decided that I didn't want to treat it as a hobby anymore, and I wanted to actually use it to fund whatever I wanted to do. At that point in time when I was younger, I loved traveling. I really wanted to go and see the world, and I thought that it was amazing, or an amazing opportunity for me to make money online so that I could actually have fun, right? And go and do the things that I wanted to do. Everybody has a different why, we like to say in our client, like in our courses, for why you create an online business, whether that be to retire early, to travel, to spend more time with family and friends. And my why at that point in time when I was in my early 20s was to go and travel and to explore, right? Have fun. And so that really fueled my fire, let's say, to build my online business and to create it into an actual business rather than just treating it as a hobby. And I already had somewhat of a background experience in terms of business and business school, because I had been in university for 2 years in business, and I knew that I wanted to create an online business or create a physical business, but do it my way and do it the way that worked for me. Because I realized later on in university, like coming out of university, that you are forced into learning certain, let's say, courses or sets of things that are deemed important for creating an online or a physical business. To create a business, you need X, Y, and Z, as the university says so, right? You buy your textbooks, you do all the case studies, you do all the projects. But for me and my brain and the way I worked and the way I processed information was a lot different. I was extremely nervous for, first of all, exams that you took and they were worth 50 or 75% of your mark, right? If you failed the entire course. And I didn't agree with that. It doesn't mean that it's right or wrong. There are people who, thrive on that and they are very much academics. But for myself and the way that I processed information and I worked, I needed to have more of that hands-on experience and actually have the experience first, like from my experience, and deal with my own issues and my own problems within my business so that I could learn and implement new strategic action steps. So for me, having my online business on Zazzle, where it was actually mine and the responsibility was mine, forced me to learn in a certain way that actually worked with me and my learning habits and my learning processes, right? And so having Elke help me with those 5 strategies, I started to implement them in my Zazzle store, and it allowed me to actually create my own case study, let's say, and my own business where I could learn while I'm actually doing the work and making the money. And now we teach our clients how to do so, and also some of our clients who have younger children and or teenagers, they are getting their teenagers and young adults involved in creating their own online business, because it's such a great learning experience where you have that hands-on experience that you probably wouldn't get within an academic setting, right? And so that transition in terms of how I dropped out, and I thought when I first dropped out, I was so scared. All of my friends were still in university. They were on track to get their university degrees, especially hearing when you try to apply for a job and they say, okay, you need a university degree and then you need 4 years of experience and then you need X, Y, and Z. I was so scared that I would never actually get a quote unquote real job because I was labeled a university dropout. When I was younger, dropping out of university was actually not such a good thing. And I know that in Elke's generation too, if you were a university dropout, like even those words have they have like a stigmatism to them, right? It's like, wow, that person they're not educated, or they don't know what they're doing, or they're never going to get a job, they're never going to make money. Nowadays, thankfully, there are other ways for people to learn and implement things and create things for themselves without having that formal education. And as I said, I'm not against or for university education. That was just my path. So if you are in university right now and you're absolutely loving it and you're on track to get your degree, I think that's wonderful and amazing. But what I'm really happy about is that there are other opportunities for people like myself who just didn't feel like it was a right fit, and that they don't have to be worried or nervous now to say that they dropped out of university, because you can create something of your own without that formal education. Obviously, you have to be dedicated to learn, and learning is not something that I didn't do. I definitely learned. I learned through trial and error. I learned through studying, through my mother's strategies. I learned through my own experiences and just researching a lot. So I did a lot of work, but I did it on my own terms, which felt really good for me. And that's how I created my now $1 million business on Zazzle. And it's just been absolutely wonderful. The ride throughout my entire life for these past 14 years has been extremely important in my growth, and now my life experiences, my happiness, my freedoms, let's say, and just my confidence too, because I can fully say that I've created my own online business and I have provided for myself. I have created these milestones. I've made memories. I have now been able to teach people how to make money online and change their lives too, which is really wonderful. And hopefully my experience through my past history with university and my journey inspires people as well, because everybody comes in through different walks of life in their journey on this earth, let's say, whether that be related to business or not. But you go through life with these certain expectations of when you hit a certain age, you have to start doing certain things, and that's just what life is, right? It's life in general. When people say, "Oh, I'm becoming an adult," it's so boring. It's like, no, well, you're becoming an adult and you're progressing, and you get to now learn how to do things going forward and to experience new things and to make those changes on your own and make those decisions for yourself, right? This topic is about me being in a university, but it's also about just being happy with where you are and being excited to make certain changes, and know that even though it might not be the most accepted change by the public, let's say, because university dropout, as I mentioned, when I was in university, that was a no-no. It was like, okay, well, this person's never going to go anywhere in life. But now you can say that even maybe it's not super accepted by everybody, it's what you need to accept for yourself. And then you just know in your core that this is where you need to go and this is the right path that you're going to be taking, as long as you're dedicated to making a change and going forward and trying to figure out how you can make a better life or a better path for you. Because that's very important, is that you need to have that dedication and that seeking of knowledge, and that's why we are now coaches. We mentor people. We teach people how to do what we did through our own trial and error. And everyone that we speak to who we've coached or that we've given our advice to has said to us, "We are so grateful that you have come into our lives, because I would never be able to do this on my own in this amount of time." And having a coach is super important, because they've gone through what you've gone through or are going through right now, and they've solved the problem. They've made a change, and now you can learn from them. And so from my experience, where I took the route for not being in university, I learned from Elke. I learned from her because she started to implement certain strategies. She has been through university. She's been through corporate. She knows, she has this experience of creating and generating this wealth for her, and always persisting and making sure that she builds something for herself. And I never experienced that. So I learned from her on how I could do that. And through that, I created an online business that had helped me now travel the world and do whatever I wanted to, and has now helped me teach others like yourself, like the listeners of this podcast and all of our clients in our courses, because just those stepping stones in life, and whether you're at this point in time in your life way back here or super forward in your life journey, whatever that may be, it doesn't mean that you can't make a change, right? And so I learned that when I was in university, and I want to help inspire others, no matter what time of life you are in. Whether I don't know if that makes sense, but like, no matter what age you are, if you're in university, if you're in high school, if you're in preschool, if you're in grade school, if you're about to retire, you're always able to make a change in your life and better yourself. And yeah, so I know I've been blabbing, so I don't know if Elke wants to just say something right now, but yeah.
Well, as a parent too, I just want to bring in that perspective. I also had experience that when I was younger, I wanted to make money being creative, and there wasn't an option other than to become an artist or a photographer or whatever. And that generation passed during that time, before online space was a thing, which really dates me, but that was so difficult for anyone who wanted to be creative to know that that's a path they could take, right? Except for accepting that maybe they would live in poverty the whole time. And because of that, my parents really pushed me to do something. Like, I was, again, like Jen, we're very fortunate that we're pretty smart and pretty good at school. And so there was no objection there. It wasn't like, oh, well, you can't go to school, so you've got to figure something else out. It was like, you're smart, why don't you become a doctor? And I personally checked that out, and that was not for me. I faint at the sight of blood and open wounds, even though it's fascinating when it's on TV, but right next to me, no thank you. But yeah, I just always knew that was a difficult decision for me. Excuse me. For me to do what others had told me to do. So I made sure that wasn't something that I would let happen to Jen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and when I was younger, my parents were always extremely supportive and asked me what I wanted and if I was enjoying myself, and I was always given the opportunity, which is wonderful, because I know that Elke and my father as well were not. You were in a generation where people told you what to do, and it was out of love, which, I mean, most people have felt that, but when you're younger, like my age, when Elke was in university, her parents told her, you need to do this to make money, or else you're never going to make money, or you're never going to be successful. And that's not the truth. But when you're younger and you're being told that by your parents, it definitely affects you, right?
Yeah. So in that regard, I just made sure that Jen didn't, like, as she's talking about all this, it's like pretty clear that the message came through loud and clear, that you couldn't just sort of goof off. You still had to take ownership, be responsible, make it work, and take whatever actions you needed in order to create and run that business to generate the wealth that you wanted. And so it's a wonderful pupil. Now, the important part is, though, that the space online has changed even in the last couple of years, let alone in the time that Jen and I started on our online journey. Like, we're grandparents compared to because 14 years in the online space is huge, right? It's like in dog years, really. It's like twice or 10 times as much. And the important part is that things are always changing. And so that's one of the other things that you could ask is, hey, was that a smart idea to go with what's tried and true and tested, which is like everyone's still getting MBAs and they're all still doing really well, becoming presidents of big corporations. And so is this the right thing to just like scrap all that and try your hand at an online business where it's a crazy space? And the answer for you, I think, you can like talk about it now, but for me it was great, because same as Jen, I have a science background, I have a graduate degree, and for me it was really like the growth and the potential of me allowing myself to build a business that's limitless, and to allow myself to challenge myself rather than just being stuck in a peg hole in a company. That's just what my personality needed. And I think that's where you have to do that assessment on your part, right? Like, Jen's story is Jen's story, my story is my story. But now that you hear us, don't just base it on what our story was. Base it on some criteria of what you feel is important to you. If you feel like you're always procrastinating to get to your job or do your job, then maybe there's something different out there for you. If you resonate with, like, if you just sort of sound or feel happy when we're talking about not being in a corporate job or not going to school, just learning on your own, making your own way, then you know that that's the right thing to do. Just make sure you're doing it wisely, because you can't just sort of try, because that's what happened to me when I first started. I figured I was so smart and I had accomplished so much that this should be easy. And in the end, it took me about 3 years to actually make any sort of decent money, where I think by the fourth year I was at 65,000 for the year in terms of earnings, whereas before that it was 90, then 2,300 one year, $90, ouch,
Yeah.
and then 2,300 the next year, and everyone's looking at me going like, "Are you sure you still want to push this forward? This is obviously becoming a real problem that you're not making any money." And so, but that it wasn't that I wasn't capable. It was because I didn't have the tools. And as Jen said, I finally got the tools. There was no one else teaching it at the time, but I applied other business skills to learn how to create wealth on the Zazzle platform. And I also really understood the platform. And so that's what we do actually in our training right now. We help you understand the platform. It's so different than any other print-on-demand company. And it's just, if you want to work on a certain platform, get training from people that figured it out. But yeah, I haven't looked back, because for many years my earnings for basically working 4 hours a month, if that, has been in the $100,000 range, and that's really wonderful. If I wanted to make it higher, I could. If I wanted to really go crazy and make $200,000-$300 or $200,000-$300,000 like some of our clients are making now, I could do that, right, if I wanted to. But I'm just happy being at around six figures, because I'm just at that stage of my life, and it's wonderful to be in a position to constantly be in control of your business, even though there's so many risks. So how do you feel about that with your having that sort of fear that maybe something will happen, but or you won't be able to continue making that money because it's all up to you?
Yeah, well, in terms of my fears, I had some issues when in my let's say, journey on Zazzle, where I needed to stop working online and I needed to hopefully just let it ride by itself. And I stopped working for about 4 years on Zazzle because of some family issues. And I still was making money, but I set up everything properly from what I mentioned with Elke at the beginning, where I implemented those 5 strategies. And just to have that freedom and going from, let's say, in university, where I was so nervous of getting a job, holding down a job, actually earning the money that I could earn potentially to, let's say, start my life or buy a house or rent an apartment or buy a car, start a family, travel. Those are real fears that I had and people have, right? It might be the luxurious types of fears, but people also fear, where's my next meal coming from? Where am I going to, buy my next set of clothes from? Like, some of our clients have had fears where they literally cannot buy certain things because they have no money. And so for me, being able to influence people and to say, hey, we can change this fear into potential income earning possibility, and also have them understand that I went through those fears as well. Not the same ones potentially, but the same sort of ideal of what's next and where am I going to be in my life going forward. And so what Elke's question was about the fear of, just sort of letting things happen, and or that you're at this point in life where you've set up this business and it's running for you and just feel good about it. I feel really good about my Zazzle business, and I feel really good about my decision that I made to drop out of university, because it led me to this point here. And for me to be able to replace those fears of what am I going to do in my career path with owning my own online business and making the decisions for myself and having so many more freedoms and possibilities, that those fears seem like ages away, and I don't even know what they really feel like anymore, because I've been so fortunate. And I have obviously done the work, but I've been able to now take what I envisioned when I was younger and make it into something that works for me. And I really hope that people who are listening to this podcast have that motivation that they can do that as well, because sometimes when we're stuck in the sense of fear or of just even society of what people tell us to do. And like Elke was told that she's never going to be making money unless she becomes a doctor or goes into the academics. And to have somebody stand on top of you and say, you are able to do what you want to do if you make it work, right? I can't tell you that if you quit your job tomorrow, then you're going to make $1 million. But if you're not happy within your job, then it's okay to make that decision and to try and find a different solution. Because although you have to take a risk assessment and figure out if that's what you should be doing or should not be doing based on, you know, your current situation, but maybe you can ease into it, right? Where you make certain decisions, baby steps here and there to change your situation going forward. And know that you shouldn't feel guilty. You shouldn't feel that sense of, you know, guilt or shame from your family, from yourself, most importantly, right? We've been given so many different influences in our lives, being told by people, being told by society of certain ways that we need to act or do things, like Elke. Right? Was extremely guilty for quitting her 9-to-5 job because she didn't know if it was going to work or not by making money online. And that definitely fueled her fire to get it working because she wanted to make sure that it did work. But she didn't need to feel guilty because you can definitely do that. And we've talked to so many people who are artists and creatives, and they have the same story where someone has told them in their past that they can't make money being an artist or being creative. And we just talked with one lovely lady right now where we did a feature on her podcast, and she also said the same thing. And she has had that experience. So just, you know, removing all of those fears. And I know my answer to your question actually is a little bit more convoluted than anything, but just being able to feel.
Yes or no?
I don't know. Big question mark. I'm not too sure. But just feeling more comfortable having my own online business. So, yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think the decision has to be yours, but it's really great to hear someone else's story. So thank you so much for sharing your story.
Yeah.
It's when you're in the story, you don't realize you're going to be telling your story later, and so there were some, you know, hard knocks as well in terms of wondering if this is the right path or whatever, and trying some other things. But as you continue to say, well, what's best for me every day, and you ask that question, you go like, I think it's still this. Then keep moving forward in your online business. If you need help, obviously, especially with the Zazzle business, you know where to find us. We have a lot of help and free and investment type help where you can invest in yourself. But the most important thing is ask yourself that question. Don't go with what people say and make it like a stigma, like I dropped out. I was like, oh my gosh, I'm labeled. Just move in your path and figure out what's best for you. There's so many options right now, one of which can be the Zazzle online business or any other online business out there that might actually just resonate with you and make you feel like, yeah, this is my thing, this is my jam, and I can make this, rock this world with that and live the life I want. Because, yeah, even just retrospect for me, yes, we do the training and we do the courses and the coaching, which we love, but we still make money on the Zazzle platform. That's our livelihood. And if I didn't do the courses, I'd still be more than fine. I've paid off all my debts. I've paid off my house. I travel. I've helped my kids go through school, just like Jen. And it didn't bother me that I sort of wasted 2 years of tuition. It's because that's her journey, right? And so it shouldn't be a waste. It was a really good thing to do, to let her see what it was like, and it wasn't for her. And hopefully that's the same for you, that you just go with your gut and find something that helps you live the life that you want and achieve the goals that you want.
Yeah. So thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Creative and Ambitious Entrepreneur Podcast, and then we will see you in the next one. Bye.
Bye.